The British Royal Navy ship HMS Trent arrived Lagos yesterday from Ghana. The ship is on a 6-day port call at the Apapa port in Lagos. The visit is geared towards strengthening the bilateral relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom, as well as enhancing maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea. Addressing journalists on board the ship, Commander Tim D. Langford of the British Royal Navy Commanding Officer of HMS Trent, alongside the British Deputy High Commissioner Johnny Baxter, expressed their commitment and cooperation with the Nigerian Navy.
In 2021, we came alongside. Nigeria remains a preferred partner for the United Kingdom. We've got some close and historical ties with the Nigerian Navy, and I think we would have been straight back the following year if it hadn't have been for the global pandemic. And it was unfortunate, I think, for all of us that we didn't have the opportunity to come straight back. Looking towards how we can identify potentially future solutions for countering insecurity within the Gulf of Guinea and the region. Looking at activities such as counter-piracy, counter-narcotics activity, and other illicit and illegal activity that takes place on the high seas, such as the increasing trend of things like illegal fishing and unauthorised fishing activity in individual nations' territorial waters and coastlines. But a lot of the discussion will definitely centre around counter-piracy activity. Is one of the things that I think that all nations have got a responsibility to address.
This visit is a fantastic, tangible evidence of the UK's position and how important relationships with countries like Nigeria are. We work together. We are pleased to be supporting the Nigerians. We're very clear that working together is the only way of resolving the kind of problems that are facing the Gulf of Guinea, and it's good that the UK can provide a positive role in that. Nigeria is a massive country for Africa. It has the second largest economy, it has the largest population, and for all of us, for Africa and for the UK, it is critical that Nigeria is stable, is safe, and is prosperous, and that's what we want to achieve. And within that, it is fantastic to see that trade between Nigeria and the UK is currently valued at £7.6 billion, and that has been increasing dramatically.
Fine.
Okay. So, I mean, this story just shows the partnership between Nigeria and Britain, bilateral partnership. We all know how much the Gulf of Guinea spans, and it's not only the UK government that does this. There's also one the Americans don't call the Americans also partake in called the Urban Game Express that they normally have every year, which is, to deepen maritime security. They get their people in. There are a lot of games around, the stretch of the Gulf of Guinea that spans many nations. In fact, it spans a lot of nations across this African coast. And it is just, like they said there, to be able to deepen the fight against, piracy on our waters, narcotics trade and all of that. I mean, for one too many times we hear narcotics trade and piracy on our water. And also, to be able to deepen the fight against crude oil theft. Increasingly, we are hearing a lot of crude oil theft across our waters. Only recently across the stretch, you had Tantita and the Navy going neck and neck as regards chasing a particular vessel that wanted to take crude oil out. So it deals with all of that. It's just providing that level of maritime security across our waters, and the British is doing it just like the Americans would do and all of that. But I think going forward, what is paramount is, when will Africa be able to effectively build its own naval capacity to be able to secure its waters? This idea that it is only foreign nations that have bigger naval capacities that will help us and lead the way and all of that, Africa should be able to grow beyond all of this. If you look back, most of the African nations gained their independence in 1960, and predominantly they don't have adequate naval capacity. And I think that should be the real thrust of the matter.
Right.
Well, the HMS Trent, is on an African mission and has been deployed to West Africa for a period of 3 months. And the issues, as has been pointed out in that video, is about checking piracy, enhancing maritime security, illicit trafficking along the Gulf of Guinea. There's a body called Friends of the Gulf of Guinea, with regard to ensuring maritime security within that zone. Now, the Gulf of Guinea being one of the most notorious, of its type. The other Gulf that is also equally notorious is the Gulf of Aden, in Africa. And so you have the British, sending this warship on a mission to Africa. But it's not just about cooperation. There's also enlightened self-interest in the matter. Along the Gulf of Guinea, the British trade, they have trade running to about £6 billion per annum, within the Gulf of Guinea. And the Gulf of Guinea, so even for the British, security is important, as it is important to other countries. Part of it, of course, is cooperation, collaboration. And the Nigerian Armed Forces, we seem to have had a long-standing relationship. But the issue is, do we have the capacity? Not just in Nigeria, but let's say West Africa. Why is it that African countries are unable to patrol, monitor, secure the Gulf of Guinea? That's part of the challenge that we have here. If you look at under international law of the sea, you have a responsibility to secure, your coastline, your, maritime zone. But we seem to drop the ball all the time. And that's why in Nigeria, we're always talking about crude oil theft. We're always talking about, piracy, illicit trafficking. But now that the Tinubu government appears to be focusing on what it calls blue economy, now securing the maritime zone should be a priority for that administration, beyond just creating this new ministry of marine and blue economy that we've been talking about. So at the level of collaboration, fine. But we also need to develop the capacity. I read a recent interview by President Obasanjo in which he was talking about the number of ships that he bought at a time and how those ships were, how they were just mismanaged. We have something we call Nigerian Shippers Council. We have all these, institutions, but are they functioning? That is the question. Beyond the ceremony of just saying a British warship, HMS Trent is visiting and all that. No. The real substance of it is securing the maritime zone and developing that blue economy in a sense, in a manner that it will be to the benefit of the Nigerian economy.
Yeah, well, according to the commanding officer, Commander Tim Langford, he had mentioned that part of their task in docking here in Nigeria, as part of the Friends of the Gulf of Guinea, is to build capacity and to train. And I believe that that's one area where we can leverage. But beyond the training and building building capacity, because this is not the first time HMS Trent has docked here, on our coastline, it is also the ability to take it forward. So number one, the will to actually, when it comes to training and capacity building, to then replicate that for our own Navy. And then number two, of course, one of the challenges we've had, even though quite a huge percentage of money is allocated to the defense in the budget, is funding as well. Because if we must secure, or if we will be able to secure our coastline as a nation, we must also be able to get the funding and tackle corruption. Referring again to that interview that former President Olusegun Obasanjo had said, whereby they would buy ships and then there was a lot of corruption around the way. It would be bought and resold to the Nigerian government, and just that, or some ships missing that were paid for, lack of accountability, especially with regards to securing our coastline. So those are some of the issues. However, in its own way, the United States has, HMS, the UK, I beg your pardon, has worked with Nigeria in this regard, and their capacity, or what they're hoping to do, is to work together for their own interests, because they do have quite heavy trade on the coastline, but also very importantly as well, the benefit for us as Nigeria is to build capacity, is to have our officers trained, is to hopefully be able to build our own security operations on that coastline.